This is land of Havilah, John 7a. After Jesus preached that he was the bread that came down out of heaven from God, and that no one had life unless they ate his flesh and drank his blood, verse 1. After these things Jesus was walking in Galilee, for he wouldn't walk in Judea because the Jews sought to kill him. Comment: Jesus is in Galilee for now. He had several defenses against being killed. First, he used common sense by staying away from Judea, except on special occasions. Second, he was safe in a crowd because the leadership, quote, feared the multitudes, Matthew 21:6. Third, he had supernatural protection, John 8:59. Verse 2. Now the feast of the Jews, the feast of booths, was at hand. Comment: the last chapter took place around the time of Passover, John 6:4. Now the feast of booths is approaching, meaning John just fast-forwarded 6 months. As he'll say at the end of the book, he didn't attempt to write down everything, John 21:25. God ordained the annual Feast of Booths in Leviticus chapter 23. By command, all males of Israel should attend the feast at Jerusalem. The feast is in the 7th Hebrew month, from the 15th of the month to the 22nd, which is late September or early October. The Hebrew name for the feast is Sukkot, which means booths, tents, or tabernacles, because according to the commandment, those attending the feast should live in temporary shelters during the 8 days of the feast. The tents are a reminder that Israel once lived in tents in the wilderness, and God was with them in a tent of his own, which was the tabernacle. He was there 100% of the time. His presence was evident by the continuous column of cloud by day and fire by night. So the feast, a commemoration that while we're on our journey, God is with us. It's also a reminder that God has a specific destination in mind for us, and he'll be with us at the destination as well. It's also a reminder of when all the people of Israel were camping together as one, just as it will be in the hereafter when all God's people will be together as one. The time of year is prophetically significant because it's after the final harvest, because after God's final harvest of souls at the end of time, we'll all be gathered to God as the people gather yearly at the feast to their God. In the summation, the Feast of Booths is a celebration of God's presence with us, his provision for us, and our presence with each other, whether on our journey or in the hereafter. Or to put it even more succinctly, the Feast of Booths is a celebration of the Exodus, which was a moving forward from the very bad to the very good under the power of God. But to do that, there had to be some sacrifice, a short period of time living in the desert, in tents, in temporary shelters or booths. So the Feast of Booths is approaching, and verse 3. His brothers therefore said to him, Depart from here and go into Judea, that your disciples also may see the works which you do. For no one does anything in secret, and himself seeks to be known openly. If you do these things, reveal yourself to the world. For even his brothers didn't believe in him. Comment: Jesus' brothers didn't believe in him. Therefore, when they said, If you seek to be known, you should go to Judea, they were mocking him, being facetious and devilish. They probably assume he's out for his own glory, that he's comfortable preaching in Galilee but not willing to challenge the power structure in Jerusalem, where surely they would embarrass him with their greater sophistication. The truth is that any time Jesus is in Jerusalem, he's the one that does the embarrassing. Verse 6. Jesus therefore said to them, My time has not yet come, but your time is always ready. Comment: we have our schedules and God has his. We always want it now, and sometimes he says that's for later. My time has not yet come, but your time is always ready. Still answering his brothers, verse 7, The world can't hate you, but it hates me because I testify about it, that its works are evil. Comment: he says they hate me in Jerusalem because I'm right, and I show the world they're wrong. I'm good and they're evil. Quote, Everyone who does evil hates the light, John 3:20. Still answering his brothers, verse 8, You go up to the feast. I am not yet going to the feast because my time is not yet fulfilled. Having said these things to them, he stayed in Galilee. But when his brothers had gone up to the feast, then he also went up, not publicly, but as it were in secret. Comment: his brothers went ahead, then he came later. So was he telling a falsehood when he said, I am not yet going up to the feast? Technically, no. He only said not yet. Verse 11. The Jews therefore sought him at the feast and said, Where is he? There was much murmuring among the multitudes concerning him. Some said, He is a good man. Others said, Not so, but he leads the multitude astray. Yet no one spoke openly of him for fear of the Jews. Comment: To this day, some say he's a good man and some say he leads people astray. The persecution of believers has already started, no one speaking openly of him for fear. They're surprised they can't find Jesus, which indicates he's been attending the feast regularly and his absence is unusual. Some are looking because they want to kill him, as it said in verse 1, but others think he's a good man and want more, verse 14. But when it was now in the middle of the feast, Jesus went up into the temple and taught. Comment: In the middle of the 8-day period, he began to teach in the temple. He'll have the supernatural protection of God and the protection of the crowd, verse 15. The Jews therefore marveled, saying, How does this man know letters, having never been educated? Jesus therefore answered them, My teaching is not mine, but his who sent me. Comment: They say he's never been educated. He knew how to read because he stood up to read the scripture in the synagogue, verse 4:16. Jesus' answer was that he was educated by the leading teacher of the universe, quote, My teaching is not mine, but his who sent me, end quote, verse 17. If anyone desires to do his will, he will know about the teaching, whether it is from God or if I am speaking of myself. Comment: If we wish to know about the teaching of the Bible, whether it's from God, we'll never know unless we're willing to obey it in the first place. If we're not willing to obey, we'll deny the Bible. If we are willing to obey, God will open it to us and we'll know it's from God. People give various reasons for not believing. They'll say the Bible's fiction, or it's full of errors, or a good God wouldn't allow suffering, or there are many other ways to God besides the Bible, or something else. The real problem is that such a person wants to continue in their sin. Therefore, he'll look for a reason to reject. But, quote, If anyone desires to do his will, he will know about the teaching, whether it is from God. Verse 18. He who speaks from himself seeks his own glory, but he who seeks the glory of him who sent him is true, and no unrighteousness is in him. Comment: Jesus' detractors assumed he was speaking from himself, but he was speaking from the Father. Therefore he wasn't seeking his own glory, but the Father's, and he was righteous. God give us discernment so that we know which teachers are speaking from themselves. If Jesus, who was God himself, didn't seek glory, none of us is qualified to seek it. How would our speech be different if we spoke from the Father and not from ourselves? 1 Peter 4:11, quote, If anyone speaks, let it be, as it were, the very words of God. Verse 19. Didn't Moses give you the law, and yet none of you keeps the law? Why do you seek to kill me? Comment: None of you keeps the law, Jesus says, which is another verse proving that universally we're sinners, or we're redeemed from sin, as it says in Romans 3:23, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. None of you keeps the law. The question is, if you don't keep the law, why do you want to kill me for allegedly not keeping it? Verse 20. The multitude answered, You have a demon. Who seeks to kill you? Comment: The multitude trusted the leadership too much. They couldn't believe the leadership wanted to kill him. It was too far-fetched. The leadership was too well-dressed, too educated, too high-ranking, too authoritative, too upstanding, that they would want to kill someone. Maybe one or two felt that way, but how could they all be virtually unified in such evil? It was an impossible conspiracy theory and paranoia. But the multitude was gullible. Someone had his head on straight, and it wasn't them. We should seriously consider the idea that leadership is absolutely corrupt and guard against corruption by creating a system of checks and balances. But not even that will help when, quote, altogether they have become corrupt. Psalm 53:3. The multitude, or at least some in the multitude, think Jesus is paranoid. But in these next comments, Jesus isn't going to defend his sanity. He'll address the leaders that want to kill him for healing on the Sabbath. Verse 21. Jesus answered them, I did one work, and you all marvel because of it. Comment: He's talking about the healing of the lame man by the pool on the Sabbath. Verse 22. Moses has given you circumcision, not that it was of Moses, but of the fathers. And on the Sabbath you circumcise a boy. If a boy receives circumcision on the Sabbath, that the law of Moses may not be broken, Are you angry with me because I made a man completely healthy on the Sabbath? Don't judge according to appearance, but judge righteous judgment. Comment: Jesus is talking about a conflict in the law of Moses. On the one hand, there's a solemn prohibition against working on the Sabbath. On the other, there's a solemn command to circumcise every boy on the 8th day after birth. When the 8th day fell on a Sabbath, there had to be a judgment call. Should they keep the first command or the second? They couldn't possibly keep both. In the same way, there was a conflict when Jesus healed on the Sabbath. The law says, love your neighbor as yourself, Leviticus 19:18. So is Jesus going to obey the Sabbath law or love his neighbor on the Sabbath as every day required? He couldn't do both. Don't judge by appearances, he says, but with righteous judgment. Righteous judgment calls for us to judge no one at any time in the court of heaven because we're all guilty. John 7b is next at landofhavilah.net, John 7b.